I never expected that one weekend would change everything I thought I knew about the woman I was dating. I was convinced Brianna was kind, thoughtful, and genuinely interested in building a future with me. But when she kept insisting on meeting my family, she had no idea she was walking straight into a long-kept tradition meant to reveal a person's true character. My parents had always believed that how someone treats people they think are beneath them says more than any sweet words or polished manners ever could. So we prepared the old, run-down house we used for the test, and I brought Brianna there, wondering if this would be the moment that defined our relationship. I didn't know it yet, but what happened that night would expose every illusion I ever had about her. When we pulled up to the small, weathered house my family used for the test, Brianna's expression shifted almost immediately. Her smile stiffened, her eyes narrowed, and she scanned the chipped paint on the front porch like it was some kind of health hazard. I tried to keep my voice light as I told her my parents were excited to meet her, but she didn't even respond. She was too busy adjusting her designer coat, trying to make sure it didn't brush against anything she considered unsanitary. The moment we stepped inside, she hesitated as if the air itself smelled wrong. My dad greeted her warmly, offering a handshake, but she barely touched his hand and quickly wiped her fingers on her jeans when she thought no one noticed. My mom invited her to sit, apologizing playfully for the old, squeaky chairs, but Brianna didn't laugh. Instead, she glanced at me with an offended look, quietly whispering, "This is where they live," as if she had stumbled into a slum. During dinner, the discomfort only intensified. My parents had prepared a simple casserole, intentionally plain and humble. Brianna poked at it with her fork like it was unfit for human consumption. She kept pulling out her phone under the table, texting, rolling her eyes, and sighing dramatically as if she were enduring some kind of punishment. At one point, my mom asked about her job, genuinely interested in getting to know her. Brianna launched into a long explanation filled with corporate jargon, emphasizing how certain income levels made it hard for her to relate to people who didn't understand financial planning. My dad exchanged a glance with me, and I knew he had already seen enough. But things escalated when my little cousin, playing the role of a visiting family member, accidentally spilled a bit of lemonade near Brianna. She jumped up like she'd been drenched in acid, snapping, "Can you all please be more careful? This is ridiculous." The room fell silent. My mom tried to lighten the mood by joking that accidents happen, but Brianna wasn't having it. She crossed her arms and muttered, "I can't believe this is the environment you grew up in," loud enough for everyone to hear. She didn't even try to apologize or soften her words. When dessert was served, she finally whispered to me, "Ethan, I'm sorry, but I can't stay here much longer. This place is depressing." Her voice wasn't full of concern. It was full of disgust. I felt something heavy settle in my stomach, because even though this was a test, her reactions weren't exaggerated or nervous. They were natural. After dinner, my dad asked her if she'd like to take home leftovers. It was part of the test. Brianna let out a laugh, sharp and cold, and said, "No, thank you. I don't think that would be appropriate." She emphasized the last word, as if the food wasn't suitable for someone like her. The evening ended with her practically rushing to the car. As soon as we closed the doors, she said, "Ethan, don't take this the wrong way, but you need to be honest with me. Your family isn't actually like this, right?" Her tone wasn't worried. It was accusatory, offended, almost panicked at the idea that she might be connected to people she considered beneath her. That was the moment I realized this night had revealed far more than I expected. The morning after that disastrous dinner, I woke up to a string of messages from Brianna. At first, I thought she might apologize or try to explain her behavior, but the very first line wiped away any hope of that. She wrote, "Ethan, we need to talk about your family. There have to be boundaries." It wasn't concern. It was control. She continued with a long paragraph about how the environment at my parents' house made her deeply uncomfortable, and how it wasn't healthy for our relationship if I spent too much time around people who lacked ambition. I read the message 3 times, trying to convince myself I had misunderstood her. I hadn't. Every word dripped with judgment. A few minutes later, she called. Her voice was soft, sweet even, but every sentence was coated with superiority. She said she cared about me and wanted the best for me, which apparently meant minimizing contact with my own family. She suggested I should limit communication to holidays or emergencies so that I could focus on elevating myself. Hearing her talk about my parents like they were burdens, instead of the people who raised me, made something twist inside my chest. I stayed quiet, trying to make sense of her logic. Then she said something that stunned me. If you really want them to fit better into our future, I can help. I could give them some money to update their clothes or their home, just enough so they don't embarrass you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was offering to financially fix my parents as if they were projects that needed renovation. I asked why she thought that was necessary, and her response chilled me. She said, "People notice who you associate with. I just don't want others thinking you come from that." She went on to say she had been mortified during dinner and that she didn't want anyone in her social circle to ever see them. She insisted that if my family ever visited us, I should set expectations so they didn't dress like that again. I could feel my jaw clenching as she talked. Her tone made it clear she wasn't making suggestions. She was setting terms. When I didn't respond quickly enough, she grew frustrated. She told me she was trying to protect our image and that I should be grateful. She was willing to help my family improve their situation. She said she couldn't date someone who didn't aspire to a certain standard, and she needed reassurance that I was dragged down by emotional obligations. The final message she sent that afternoon sealed everything. I need you to think seriously about whether you want a future with me. If you do, you have to start distancing yourself from environments that don't reflect who we are. Who we are. As if she had already decided my identity for me. I stared at her words, realizing they weren't coming from stress or discomfort. This was how she truly saw people, through a hierarchy she had built in her mind, where worth was measured by money, clothes, houses, and social perception. And worst of all, she saw my family at the bottom of that ladder. That was the moment something inside me shifted. I wasn't angry yet, just awake. A few days later, I arranged to meet Brianna at a quiet coffee shop downtown. I could tell immediately that she had prepared herself for some kind of confrontation. She pulled out her laptop, opened a PowerPoint, and began detailing what she called managing economic differences in relationships. She had charts, graphs, and bullet points, all carefully designed to show how families of different financial standings could create stress and misalignment. I sat across from her, sipping my coffee, trying to keep my expression neutral. She was completely confident, smiling and pointing at slides as if she were giving a corporate presentation. Her voice was firm, precise, and judgmental. Every point she made reinforced what I had already realized. She didn't see my family as people. She saw them as obstacles she needed to manage or improve. Finally, I closed my eyes for a brief moment, took a deep breath, and decided it was time. I leaned forward and said, "Brianna, there's something you need to know before you go any further." Her smile faltered slightly. I could tell she sensed the shift in tone. I explained that the house she had visited, the old, run-down home, was just a test. I told her my parents owned 3 successful companies, and that everything she had seen was staged to see how she would behave under the illusion of modest means. Her eyes went wide. Her hands trembled slightly on the laptop keyboard. Her mouth opened, but no words came out immediately. She stuttered, trying to regain composure, and said, "Wait, you mean it's all fake?" I nodded. Yes, every piece of furniture, every simple meal, Every uncomfortable moment was meant to test your character. Her entire demeanor changed in an instant. The confidence, the judgment, the superiority, it all vanished. For the first time, she looked vulnerable. Her voice cracked as she whispered, I didn't know, I would have. She tried to apologize, to explain, to promise she could change. She promised she wouldn't let her behavior reflect on me, that she could prove herself. But I had already seen her true self. The initial disgust, the judgment, the attempts to manipulate my family, they weren't mistakes. They were instinctual. They revealed the person she really was when confronted with people she deemed inferior. I told her calmly, Brianna, I can't be with someone who treats people this way. This isn't about money or status. It's about respect. And you've made it clear, you don't have any for the people closest to me. Her face went pale. She tried to reach across the table, but I pulled back. She began pleading, promising she would be different, begging for a second chance. I shook my head. I've already seen enough, I said. This is who you are, and it's not someone I can spend my life with. She looked devastated, like the world had crumbled beneath her feet. She opened her mouth again, searching for words, but nothing she said could undo the damage. I gathered my things and left. The PowerPoint still open on the table, Brianna sitting there stunned, staring at me as I walked away. That was the moment everything became real. I wasn't just breaking up with her. I was stepping away from someone whose values and character were fundamentally incompatible with mine. The test had done its job. Her reaction had confirmed the truth. The next morning, the fallout began. Brianna didn't accept the breakup quietly. Within hours, she started posting on TikTok, framing my family as deceptive and manipulative. She described the fake poor house as a cruel trick, accusing us of lying and testing her in a way she claimed was emotionally abusive. Her videos quickly spread across Facebook and Twitter, and she tagged me in every post, making sure people knew my name. At first, I ignored it, thinking the truth would come out. But Brianna escalated. She contacted the HR department at my company, claiming I had created a hostile environment by involving my personal life in my work. She sent long, detailed emails accusing my parents of fraud and emotional manipulation. Her tone was desperate, angry, and highly exaggerated, but she made it sound serious. HR barely responded, politely asking for proof, but she kept sending follow-ups. She didn't stop there. She went to my father's office in person, trying to confront him directly. She demanded an explanation, waving her phone around, recording every interaction. My father simply smiled, calmly told her that her claims were absurd, and refused to engage further. By now, her frustration was visible. She seemed to be unraveling in real time. Her online presence became chaotic. She posted videos repeating the story of how she had been tricked by a wealthy family, each time exaggerating more details. She called me a liar, claimed she had been humiliated, and demanded justice from anyone who would listen. Some people watched with amusement, others criticized her. The videos started attracting memes and comments, mocking her over-the-top claims. She even tried legal action. She emailed lawyers, drafting complaints about emotional distress and manipulation, claiming she had been psychologically harmed by the experience. Every message she sent was more dramatic than the last, but the lawyers she contacted quickly determined there was no case. Her attempts to intimidate or pressure my family and me legally fell flat. Despite repeated failures, Brianna refused to back down. She began contacting mutual acquaintances, trying to rally support for her version of events. She called friends, old colleagues, and even some distant relatives, spreading her narrative of being betrayed by deception. Most people either ignored her or laughed at the story. Her persistence was only making her look worse. Meanwhile, the community online had started turning against her. Memes highlighting her overreaction and entitled behavior went viral. people dissected her videos, pointing out inconsistencies and exaggerations. Her credibility began to collapse, and her social media became a minefield of ridicule. Through all of this, I stayed out of it. I let her reveal her own character in real time. The more she tried to attack, the more apparent it became that her behavior was extreme, entitled, and completely disconnected from reality. By the end of the week, it was clear that her campaign of harassment had failed spectacularly. She had isolated herself, destroyed her credibility, and left everyone questioning her judgment. Brianna didn't stop with online attacks and failed legal threats. She began targeting every corner of my life she could reach. Her next move was sending accusations to my younger sister's university, claiming my family had pressured her in ways that could damage her education. Emails were sent directly to administrators, full of dramatic language and unfounded claims. The university quickly investigated and dismissed every allegation, but the effort terrified my sister and caused unnecessary stress. Then she escalated further. Brianna contacted lawyers, attempting to file claims for emotional damages. She drafted long, detailed complaints, claiming trauma and harassment. She even went as far as implying that my family's test constituted psychological manipulation. Each attempt was met with immediate legal rejection, often accompanied by counterclaims from our attorneys pointing out the frivolous nature of her actions. Her professional life began to unravel too. The company where she worked in interior design received emails from her, from people she had enlisted, and from her social media posts. The office became aware of the chaos she was creating, and her reputation quickly deteriorated. Managers called her behavior unprofessional, disruptive, and toxic. Within weeks, she was fired for the damage she had caused, her credibility and career suffering as a result of her obsession with revenge. Brianna's behavior continued to spiral. She even attempted to influence my former girlfriend, Haley, trying to prevent any reconciliation between us. She sent messages, gifts, and manipulative appeals, trying to create doubt and tension. Haley, thankfully, saw through it immediately and ignored her attempts entirely. Despite the mounting evidence that her plans were failing, Brianna refused to stop. She turned to social media fundraising, creating a GoFundMe claiming she needed help, recovering from emotional trauma caused by my family's deception. The campaign flopped spectacularly. After weeks of online promotion, she received only $47 in donations. The public perception had turned completely against her, and her attempts at sympathy were met with mockery. Her personal life collapsed alongside her professional and social standing. She returned to living with her parents, visibly humiliated, and had no income. She attempted to reinvent herself as a life coach, specializing in wealth and personal growth. But the irony of her situation and her previous behavior made the venture unsuccessful. Meanwhile, the damage she inflicted on herself became clear to everyone who had witnessed the events unfold. Her attempts to control, manipulate, and shame my family had only highlighted her entitlement and lack of empathy. She had lost friendships, career opportunities, and any credibility she had left. Through all this, I remained detached. I watched as her obsession with retaliation and control consumed her life entirely. Her actions had only confirmed the lessons I had learned during that first dinner. No apology, no promise to change, and no campaign of revenge could undo the true nature she had revealed. By the end of it all, Brianna had destroyed almost everything she once valued. She had become a cautionary example of how unchecked entitlement, obsession, and lack of respect can completely unravel a person's life. And in the midst of all this chaos, I could finally see the calm after the storm, knowing I had stepped away before any of it could touch me further. By the time Brianna's actions reached their peak, the damage to her own life was undeniable. She had lost her job, alienated friends, and destroyed her reputation online and in her professional circles. Desperate for attention and validation, She decided to create a GoFundMe claiming she needed financial help to recover from the emotional trauma caused by my family. Her campaign quickly became a joke. After weeks of promotion, she raised a mere $47, highlighting how isolated and disbelieved she had become. She returned to living with her parents, humiliated and frustrated. Her attempts to reinvent herself as a life coach, specializing in wealth and personal growth, fell flat. No one wanted to hire someone whose actions had become infamous for entitlement and vindictiveness. Her social media posts, once full of confidence, were now met with ridicule and mockery. Meanwhile, my life had started to return to normal. The chaos Brianna created was over, and I could breathe again. I reconnected with old friends, spent time with my family, and allowed myself to heal from the stress her actions had caused. And then, unexpectedly, I ran into Nicole, my former girlfriend, at a mutual friends gathering. There was no awkwardness, no tension, just a sense of comfort I hadn't realized I missed. Nicole and I began talking again, slowly at first, catching up on our lives and reflecting on the past. I realized how much time had been wasted on someone whose values were completely incompatible with mine. Nicole had always shown kindness and respect toward my family and friends, qualities Brianna had clearly lacked. Over the following weeks, we spent more time together, laughing, sharing memories, and rebuilding a connection that had been paused but never truly gone. As Brianna's chaos subsided into obscurity, my relationship with Nicole grew stronger. We didn't rush things. We took the time to appreciate each other and the people in our lives who mattered. My parents welcomed her warmly, and this time I didn't have to hide anything. There were no tests, no illusions, just genuine connections. Meanwhile, Brianna's life continued on a downward trajectory. Without a career, a supportive social circle, or credibility, she became increasingly isolated. Her GoFundMe attempt remained a symbol of her failure to gain sympathy or rebuild her life. Even her attempts to pivot into a life coach persona were met with skepticism and ridicule. Watching from the sidelines, I realized how stark the contrast was between our paths. The person who had tried to manipulate, belittle, and control had only undone herself. The people who treated others with respect, empathy, and humility were the ones who thrived. By the time I looked back on the events, it was clear that the weekend at the fake poorhouse had done more than reveal Brianna's character. It had shown me who truly belonged in my life. And as Nicole and I slowly rebuilt our relationship, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The chaos had passed, and a new, healthier chapter had begun. Life had a way of sorting people out, and this time it had worked perfectly. Looking back, the entire experience taught me an unforgettable lesson. Character reveals itself in how someone treats those they think are beneath them. Brianna showed her true self clearly, and it saved me from a lifetime of disappointment. I realized that no amount of charm, flattery, or clever words could hide a lack of respect and empathy. Now, life has returned to a sense of calm and balance. Nicole and I are rebuilding our relationship slowly, appreciating each other and the people around us. My family and I can laugh about the fake poor house without the tension and anxiety that Brianna brought. We still eat tuna casserole together, a simple meal that once sparked judgment and disdain, now a symbol of understanding and resilience. I've learned to trust my instincts and recognize red flags early. Respect, kindness, and humility are not negotiable in the people I allow close to my life. Sometimes tests are unnecessary because behavior will always reveal itself. And sometimes, the simplest meals and quiet moments teach the most powerful lessons. Life moves forward, and those who respect others rise, while those who try to manipulate and belittle fall. I've chosen peace, connection, and authenticity. And in the end, that has made all the difference.